Welcome back to The Price of Business. I am your host, Given Price, talking to you about you and your business. You know, we love to get authors here on the program, and we're looking forward, certainly, to our guest today. Her name is Jade Yu, and she's a writer and does some really extraordinary work. In fact, I want to mention very early her website, icptheory.com. And basically, one of her objectives is to literally ignite an East-West globalizing dialogue. That's how she put it so eloquently, in fact. And looking forward to a conversation with her. And, just like as a cursory look at the website, very interesting in terms of the approach that you take. And glad to have you on the program. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning to you, and I'm really, really excited being on your show.
Well, we're delighted to have you. You also have a book. Talk a little bit about that.
Actually, I have two books. The first book is Igniting an East-West Globalizing Dialogue, Volume 1, Thus Spoke Chuanzi. And basically, it's the first book in a 4-volume tomb of works that is aimed at engaging the reader and empowering him to realize his creative potentiality within. And the whole aim really is to attain this level of liberation, which I call ultimate freedom of and from the self in those moments of creative realization. So I kind of approach this in a very unique way in the sense of bringing an Eastern and Western dialogue in this global setting. And I have this discussion of Nietzsche's book, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, but instead I put in Chuanzi, who is the father of Taoism, even before Lao Tzu. And so he's like a BC era philosopher and sage.
Yes.
And I do this in a fable-like setting. So there's a whole cast of characters involved in this conversation, from Epictetus to Schopenhauer to Collins, who is a modern-day sociologist, and engaging them, and they come in as a dragon or a phoenix, a swan. So it's very unique in that sense.
Okay, very interesting. And so the book is called a philosophy book, but it almost sounds like a spirituality work.
It is, but really because I'm proposing this theory, which is infinite potentiality theory, it's an epistemological and ontological approach to this worldview perspective. And in a very real sense, it's also a history, because what I propose is a qualitative ontological paradigm shift of dyads from the phenomenological and metaphysical duality to a collaborative relationship between infinite creative potentiality and ultimate freedom. And not only am I proposing this, I'm saying that this has already happened. So in that sense, it's a history, an accounting of what has already transpired.
Okay, so help me out a little bit, because, I'm familiar with the Tao, and I'm certainly familiar with Western texts, and I'm something of a philosophy geek, but I would think a lot of people who have heard what you shared would be kind of exhausted by that, by what you just shared. So let's bring it down into practical levels, talking to your next door neighbor about the standard paradigm on the way we approach these subjects and what this new paradigm looks like.
That's actually why I wrote the second book, which is a compendium to the first. And the second book is called ICPtheory.com, the First 100. And it's basically bringing this philosophy and this high-level intellectual ideology into everyday practical terms. So for the everyday individual, the reason this matters and the reason I can answer the so what factor, the SWF, why is this important, is today, with all of the electronic technologies enabling the individual with this empowered agency to make a difference, a very real difference at the singular level, it's really more important now than ever before to tap into this sense of creativity for meaningful empowerment and difference and impact, not only on this present generation and the locus of where that individual is, but also for future generations to come. So it's very much in a sense of when you're creating, when you're painting, when you're writing, even when you're cooking, when you're engaged in this activity and you have this level of complete oneness because you're in the moment. You don't think about, I have an appointment, tomorrow, or, I've got to, get some pencils for my daughter. You don't think about the, quotidian, mundane things related to the self because you're totally engaged. Mm-hmm. And in those moments of freedom from yourself and that daily routine, you're actually occupying the space of the other. And when you can prolong those times when you're in the other, that's when you can begin this notion of making an impact, making a meaningful difference, because you're not in it for yourself, you're in it for the impact it has positively.
Yeah, I guess the part of the problem is that we've become such a leisure generation. Even in the work we do, we have plenty of mental space for being obsessed, concerned, and worried about other stuff. Getting in that zone seems to be harder to do, unless it's online, like being on the internet, which is almost more of an obsessive, addictive type of thing.
Right, and, it's an interesting thing, this, with all the technologies at our disposal, and even with, 3D printing and even 3D food printing, which is quite amazing, it's more important than ever to be cognizant of those times when we are completely engaged in distraction just for, laziness and just for, this sense of, frivolous time versus really making a conscious effort to be actively engaged in the moment, in your life, in living. And technologies can help us, can empower us, can mediate this level of agency at the individual level. But it's a fine line, and that's sort of where my theory comes into play, and where I'm really asking people to engage in activities that make a meaningful difference, even if it's just, a simple thing of creating one little thing, like creating dinner, like, preparing something, but doing
Jade,
it.
I apologize. We're getting low on time, and I do have a couple of crucial questions for you, real quickly. I apologize.
Yes.
What is your background, your credentials as far as a writer and working philosophy and spiritual work?
Well, I really basically just studied a lot, and I've read a lot. My background, it's a little bit unusual. I have a bachelor's degree in English and in political science. I have a master's degree in history and in sociology, and a doctorate in metaphysics. But all throughout, I've just been studying and reading on my own, and so it's just personal interest, and that's how I created my own theory.
That's interesting. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to tell us about the theory, and I do want to mention that if you go to icptheory.com, you'll see plenty of information about it. Plus, from there's a link. Look for Outskirts Press or Amazon and Barnes & Noble, and that link will take you to the book. And I encourage the listener to certainly check it out. And I want to thank you, Jade, for your time today.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation. And Jade Hughes, she's the author of very interesting, looks like paradigm-shifting work on ICP theory. And go to icptheory.com to learn more about it. When we come back, much more for you. I do want to remind you, best content here shows up over there at usdailyreview.com. And this is The Price of Business.